Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 229 of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. The brothers Max and Nate and Aaron here with you. Aaron, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. How are you?
I am sick as a dog, but like I told Aaron before we went on the air, this cold kind of snuck up on me. I just woke up with it this morning, and but because this is going to be this will be this week's is Aaron's promotion that he is fantasy booking, I figured, you know what, I can limp through this because Aaron gets to do most of the heavy lifting in this episode anyway. But that's what we're doing. As you know, on the last episode, we went back and I booked my first month and big show for my promotion that I drafted from 1992, and this week it's Aaron's turn. I think it's a fun little thing. I like fantasy booking. I don't know how the listeners feel about listening along with it. I got some positive feedback though, so
it's good.
I think we may do this one again in the future. You and I were just talking about things we can come back to, like concept shows. I think this concept works. I enjoy it.
Keep the same roster for like a year or whatever.
Yeah, we could come back to it
then in June '93 we do another draft.
Yeah, and we can set some rules, or whatever. Yeah. Maybe if somebody else came along at this time in 1992, maybe you say, hey, I want to draft this person into my roster. And then if we both say yes, then so be it. Or maybe if we want to have people do a trade or have people jump ship or whatever, we can play with it. It's our world. We can do what we want.
Yeah. All right.
But that being said, like I said, everybody, Aaron had drafted his roster for 1992. I can't remember if I went through my roster again last week when I did it, but if you want to, you can. If you don't have to, but
no, I'm not gonna do that.
So if you want to go ahead and start laying the groundwork for what we're going to be doing here.
All right. Well, like you said, we drafted our rosters. You did your shows last week. I'm doing these ones. I have decided that we're rebranding the NWA.
Okay.
So we're bringing that back. Broke away from WCW. Much like you did, I picked my announced team, and it was Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan. I also selected 2 managers. I originally was going to go with Jerry Lawler, but changed my mind because I was going to cheat, be like, oh, wrestler manager, but I got that in Eddie Gilbert. So my managers are Harley Race. Main reason I picked Harley was, well, because it's Harley Race, and 2, I have Vader. Right. And I think that's one of the best manager-wrestler combinations in the history of wrestling is Big Van Vader and Harley Race. So I'm going to keep those 2 together. And the other manager I've selected is Jim Cornette. So those are my managers.
And just as a side note, I totally agree about Harley and Vader.
Great guys together. So like I said, it's NWA. I didn't get cute with the name of the show. It's just NWA Pro Wrestling. I kind of like the old school aspect when the company didn't have it's just like welcome to Mid-South Wrestling. You know what I mean? It didn't have a fucking name or whatever. So anyway, unless you got anything else, we'll get into my first week of the show.
No. I mean, are you doing a small arena setting? Are you doing a studio setting?
We're in arenas.
Okay. Just wanted to check.
Yeah. Not like. Yeah. Just. Yeah. We're an arena show.
Okay.
It's NWA Pro Wrestling, and like I said, our commentators are Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan. So they welcome everybody back to the NWA, and they go kind of down the history of the NWA, how long it's been around, shit like that. If you're reestablishing something, you want to, let people know what it was and know that it had a history.
Mm-hmm.
And they hype that tonight's main focus of the show will be the television championship and the world's heavyweight championship, and how we're going to declare those champions. And that will be tonight. There will be a 2-match series, and the winners of those matches will go to the Great American Bash to fight for the heavyweight championship. And those matches are Big Van Vader and Rick Steiner. and also Bret the Hitman Hart and Ted DiBiase.
2 great matches.
Yes, the championship committee has deemed those 4 are the top contenders for that belt. And also, the way we are going to declare what the television championship match will be is through a tag team match, and the winning team will go to the Great American Bash to wrestle for the tag team championships. And it is Brian Pillman and Brad Armstrong teaming up to face off against Owen Hart and Rick Martel. So, I don't know if you like that concept of a tag team match to declare a title match, but I thought it was kind of a neat idea. So,
yeah, I mean, because even if the 2 guys don't really care for each other, they're going to have a shared goal of trying to get to the championship match, so they're going to help each other out anyway.
Yep.
I'm your partner tonight, buddy. It's you and me.
Yeah. And if you get pinned, god damn you, maybe that's a feud.
Yeah.
So we've established that, and our opening, the first match of the new NWA is the Berserker with his handler, manager, whatever you want to call him, Eddie Gilbert, and he is facing Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I don't know why the visual of the Berserker being managed by Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert cracks me up, but it's what I'm going with, and I like it.
Because Hot Stuff's a little shit, so having a heavy like that is fun.
Yeah. And I've kept John Nord in the Berserker character, so he's still crazy. And he didn't have music, so he would be coming out to Hot Stuff with Eddie Gilbert, which is funny. And this match is going on. It's a standard, like, big guy. I should call Ricky Steamboat a little guy, but you know what I mean. A power wrestler versus a high-flying technical wrestler. It starts out, Berserker is working over Ricky Steamboat. Ricky Steamboat ends up baby facing up, coming up from behind, and Eddie Gilbert ends up getting involved, causing the disqualification. And as they double team Ricky Steamboat, Nikita Koloff, he returns to the NWA and he makes the save. And Steamboat and Koloff run off Berserker and Eddie Gilbert, and the Steamer is your winner via disqualification.
Mm-hmm.
So, setting up our first possible feud there. Any thoughts on that one?
No, not yet.
Okay. I forgot to mention my interviewer. The interviewer I've selected is Sean Mooney. I think he's underrated.
I agree.
And doesn't get talked about enough. So Sean is my interviewer, and he brings out the good-looking white meat babyface Jim Powers. And he discusses with Jim Powers what he feels his role in the NWA is going to be. Powers says that he wants to get into the tag team division, and he's gone through the roster, talked to people that he thinks would be a good to perfect fit for to be his tag team partner. He hasn't quite selected him yet. And then Tom Zenk comes out, and he interrupts, and he's like, I know I paid my phone bill. I must have missed the call. And Jim Powers tells Tom, it's like, no offense, but I didn't call you. I didn't think, you'd be a good partner. Tom is obviously a little offended, but he just wants to know why. It's like, we've always been cordial in the back, whatever, like what's the deal? And Jim Powers says, well, just go ask Brian Pillman or Rick Martel. You know what I mean? You're not reliable. I just, you know what I mean? Like, you've kind of shit out on your partners a couple times and whatever. So, and Zank's even a little upset because he talks about like Brian Pillman's a bad guy now and whatever, and you're going to judge his opinion over his. And Powers is just like, hey, Pillman might be a jerk, but he's never walked out on his partners, So anyway, then Powers walks away, like he said, no offense, I just don't see it. And Zank, he just kind of looks perturbed and kind of dumbfounded on why somebody wouldn't want to be his partner. So that's what's going on there.
Nice setup.
And Yes. And then we roll into Jim Cornette coming out, and he is being interviewed once again by Sean Mooney. And Cornette says that he has come back to the NWA. He wants to reform Camp Cornette, or he's forming Camp Cornette. And he says that he has 2 new charges tonight, and he wants to bring out his first charge, and that is the Mighty Hercules. So somebody
Who
that
he
has
has a past with, yeah.
Yes. I'm trying to, not on everything, but some of this stuff I'm trying to go off past things from other companies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because how can you start angles and stuff? It's like, oh, this is the first show.
Yeah.
Like, why would these guys have heat with each other or whatever? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think that's something that got lost. Some wrestling, Bill Watts did it. He'd do it, where he'd talk about other companies and things that happened. And I just think that's like, I don't always agree with ignoring past events, even though it wasn't in your company. So,
right.
So Hercules is the first member of Camp Cornette, and he is going to go into action and his opponent is Paul Diamond. And in this match, it's just a showcase for showing off the strength of Hercules, and the commentators are talking about how Hercules kind of went into not like a downward turn in his career, but just like, he's trying to reestablish himself. And now with the manager expertise of Jim Cornette, it looks like this is going to happen. And Hercules gets the full Nelson on Paul Diamond for the submission victory. And your winner is the Hercules. The Hercules?
The Hercules.
Then we move into Mooney again. He brings out, and we're doing these on a stage. I'm just the old stage, not like at the top of the arena. I'm talking like the old
with
school
the crowd with the crowd behind you.
Yeah, we're doing those types. So Mr. Mooney brings out Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase comes out, and he says that he has more money than he can ever spend, and he's not the $1 million man, because I'm not whatever, but we're not completely getting rid of that gimmick though. He's Ted DiBiase. Says he has more money than he can ever spend, but it doesn't matter because it couldn't even buy him the world championship. Because it technically couldn't. He tried, but he didn't get it.
Good effort.
He said so. So he said, all the money in the world couldn't buy me the heavyweight championship, so it's time to go back to black. And he holds up the old school black glove, like he had in the Mid-South. And as he's commentating, or as he's conducting this interview, Jim Cornette and Hercules walk up to the stage. Sean Mooney asks what business they have, and Ted DiBiase says his business is my business because my manager is Jim Cornette. And so that is how we've declared who the other member that Cornette has said is going to be in his stable. So Camp Cornette is forming, and it's so far Hercules and Ted DiBiase.
And Mama Cornette's going to get that new garage she wanted.
Yeah, it's got lots of money right here. So Cornette is going to handle all the DiBiase's business because DiBiase says he wants to just concentrate on becoming the world's heavyweight champion. And they all kind of laugh together and walk off. Then we get a video package called The Violence of Vader, and obviously it's more Japanese footage than anything, but it's just showing the ass kicker that Vader is. So there's that. So, and obviously we mentioned that Vader will be facing off with Rick Steiner later on tonight for a shot at the World Heavyweight Championship match. Anything on either one of those? If not, it's cool. All right, so now we're moving into the tag team match. Sorry, not tag team title match. The tag team match is going to declare the World Television title match at Great American Bash. Like I said, it's Brian Pillman and Brad Armstrong versus Owen Hart and Rick Martel, which would be, I think, a banger of a match.
Mm-hmm.
During the match, Martel isn't really working heel. He's kind of doing his thing, you know. And Owen Hart, he's obviously a baby face, so he's wrestling his thing. But Pillman keeps trying to cheat, and Brad Armstrong doesn't like it. And Pillman's getting mad at him because he's like, "Do what you got to do to win, guy." You know. Anyway, going back and forth. Owen Hart and Armstrong are in the ring. Owen gets sent into the turnbuckles by Brad Armstrong, who's getting ready to go for a monkey flip out of the corner, but Pillman strikes Armstrong with a chain, which Owen didn't see. Owen falls onto Brad Armstrong and rolls him up and gets the 1-2-3. So Owen Hart gets pinned. Brad Armstrong, Brian Pillman are your winners. They're going to be the television title match at Great American Bash. And apparently Mark Cruz is going to be joining. I don't know what that's about. So like I said, Brian Pillman and Brad Armstrong now going for the television championship. Brad Armstrong obviously didn't know about the cheating ways of Brian Pillman, so we'll probably see that coming down the pike. The next up is Larry Zbyszko. He's out. And Sean Mooney's confused because he said this was supposed to be the interview time for the Natural Dustin Rhodes, but Larry Zbyszko said he's not waiting around anymore. And the best part with this angle, Nate, is you got to think about it in Larry Zbyszko's voice.
Do you think I care? Do you think I
Dustin
care?
Rhodes. And he is upset. And do you know why Mr. Larry Zbyszko is upset? Because he was drafted last in the entire thing. Like, out of all the draft, even out of the other company, I was last. I'm Larry Zbyszko. I'm not last at anything. Ever. And then Dustin Rhodes comes out, and he says, for one, this is my interview time. You shouldn't be interrupting. And two, you should just be happy you got picked at all. There's other guys that didn't get picked. There's other guys that are waiting to get into one of these companies, and maybe you should just be grateful. Zbyszko says that Dustin Rhodes isn't anything without his last name and his fat ass daddy. Dustin Rhodes says he's not going to take the bait and fight Larry Zbyszko. And he's like, nah. He's like, I don't like the name Larry Zbyszko anymore. And Dustin looks at him and goes, I think I have a better name for you. And guess what it is? It's Larry Lasto. And all the fans, guess what they start chanting? Larry Lasto, Larry Lasto. And he gets mad and storms off as all the fans chant Larry Lasto. Which I think is a fun little angle. Anything on Larry Lasto?
I think it's fun too. Like you said, in just imagining it in his voice.
Yes, I think it's a great little angle. And then we get a Rick Steiner video hyping him up, and as you mentioned, he's going to be facing Vader later tonight. Well, actually, up next. So the next matchup is a world's title contender match between Rick Steiner and Big Van Vader with Harley Race. It's a stiff back and forth match. Race tries to get involved, but Steiner hits him with a belly to belly on the ramp. Because I just would love when Harley'd take like the biggest bump in the match when he'd fight Vader. Mm-hmm. Steiner then tries for his flying bulldog, but Vader ducks it. He hits Steiner with a big shoulder block kitchen sink type maneuver. Vader hits Steiner with that, and as Steiner's getting back up, he ends up kicking him in the gut, hits the power bomb, and obviously after the power bomb, the 1-2-3, and Vader has now advanced to the Great American Bash NWA World's title match. So there's that.
And it's excuse me. Screwed me. And with the finish, Rick Steiner stays strong too.
Yeah, he didn't lose anything on it. He got a little bit of heat or a little bit of a babyface thing by knocking around Harley. So I thought it was good. And he went toe to toe with the baddest man on the planet right now in the wrestling business, Vader. Then we get a Hart family history video package. And basically, obviously telling the history of the Hart family and how Brett's the most successful out of all the Harts and everything like that. And we get a little love to Owen, obviously, because he's on my show. So anyway, that moves us into our main event, which is Bret Hart versus Ted DiBiase with Jim Cornette in the Other Worlds Title Contender Tournament. It's a back and forth technical match. As the match is going on, for some reason, Arn Anderson and Matt Bourne attempt to get involved, but Owen Hart comes out and he's still he's bandaged up because he got busted open from the chain. And he has with him Davey Boy Smith, who the fans fought big for, because he was a huge deal at this time. And they stop Anderson and Bourne from getting involved, which just distracts DiBiase, which allows Bret to hit DiBiase up against the turnbuckle and then roll him up into a bridge for the 1, 2, 3, and Bret Hart advances to the Great American Bash. So that is how we go off the air. We find out our big singles title matches are going to be Brian Pillman and Brad Armstrong for the television championship, and Bret Hart versus Big Van Vader for the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship.
I don't know why, but now that you've set up Bret Hart versus Vader, for some reason in my mind, I just picture finding some way for Stu Hart to be like, Harley Race, if you wanted to try me, you should have tried me.
You tried me. Oh, that's coming up. Don't worry. That is on the horizon. And it wasn't the exact finish of what Ted did to Bret at the Survivor Series, but it's kind of similar. I remember that finish right. I was trying to think of that little Survivor Series 6-7 minute thing or whatever they had,
right,
as kind of going into the finish of it. Because other than that, I don't remember them having a lot to do with each other.
They had that. They had that match, and then, I guess it wasn't even just that match. They had that end of the Survivor Series, and then I believe they did a Saturday night's main event, but that was the only time I ever remember the two of them. I mean, I'm sure they did shit on house shows or whatever.
Yeah.
But on TV, that's the only two times I remember them having any interaction.
And I wouldn't bring it up wholeheartedly, but like it's kind of like too. They did mention that during the Survivor Series that Bret's brother Dean passed away or whatever, and he was fighting for Dean and he lost. So this is kind of like I'm trying to go with the Hart history with the NWA and just I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense or not.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's kind of like Bret beat Ted and kind of it was almost like he was kind of getting comeuppance for Dean. You know what I mean? Type of thing. But anyway, so that, other than botching the tag team finish, I think I did okay on that one, right?
Yeah. Good start.
Okay.
You've established some championship matches and planted the seeds for a couple of rivalries.
Yeah. So I thought good first week.
And you set yourself up for your first signs that fans can make.
Yeah, Larry Lastow. And it's a great guy to do it with. Like, I don't know. And it's like, I thought of it because he was like I said, it was like Larry Zbyszko was the very last guy. Not just the last guy picked by the NWA, the last guy in the entire thing. I just thought like that would get in that guy's crawl. So we roll into week number 2. Week number 2 for NWA Pro Wrestling. Once again, like I said, Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan welcome everybody to the NWA. Excuse me. Ross hypes that Bret Hart is not in the arena tonight, but he is going to be on the show because earlier this week, Jim Ross traveled to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and visited with Bret Hart and was going to take a guided tour of the world famous Hart House and get a look at the dungeon. And Bret Hart was going to talk about the history of his family and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, once again, going back onto the history of Bret Hart. And then we also hyped that last week we saw Vader in what he does in the ring. This week we are going to see footage of the crazy training regimen of Big Van Vader. So that's what's coming up.
And Mark Brew is joining us. And Mark, you missed the first week of Aron's TV, but
oh shit.
So try to keep up, buddy.
It's 1992. He has his roster. I know you said you listened to the last two shows we did, so you kind of get the gist of what's going on here.
Yes, sir.
Aron has restarted the NWA. And go ahead, Aron. You can.
So should I give him a recap real quick or what?
Just let him know that the title matches that heading into your pay-per-view at least that have been set up so far.
Just so you know, Mark, the title matches that we're going to have is it's going to be for the NWA World's title, Vader versus Bret Hart, because on the last show, Vader beat Rick Steiner and Bret Hart defeated Ted DiBiase. So those two are going to now face each other. Ted DiBiase is managed by Jim Cornette. Also, in a tag team match, Brian Pillman and Brad Armstrong defeated Owen Hart and Rick Martel, and those two winning that match gave them the opportunity to wrestle each other at the Great American Bash for the television championship.
Surprisingly, I really like that pairing. Owen and Rick.
Yeah, but they didn't win, so it's okay though.
But I feel like that's a really interesting pairing.
And the only main feud that we established, a straight up feud, is Larry Zbyszko was upset because out of the entire draft he was selected last, and Dustin Rhodes was teasing him about it and has given Larry Zbyszko the nickname Larry Lasto. So those are the big things going into the next show. Everything else I think you'll be able to catch up on because I can talk back about it. So are you established, Mark? Are you caught up?
I'm established. I'm caught up.
All right. He read that in the NWA magazine. He got caught up on what's going on. So, like I said, Jim Ross, Bobby Heenan, they welcome us to the NWA Pro Wrestling. Jim Ross, like I said, is going to give us a pre-recorded tour with Bret Hart at the Hart House. So Bret Hart was not in the arena because he was there and he stayed in Calgary to train. And we're also going to get training montages and videos of Big Van Vader. So our upcoming match, our opening match, I should say, is Rick Steiner versus the Mountie. The Mountie's out. I did not change Jacques Rougeau. He's kept his Mountie gimmick because I think it's awesome.
Yes.
And during this match, Rick Steiner's just throwing the Mountie around. Mountie's being his Mountie heelish guy. And Steiner throws the Mountie into the corner. And Nate, you should see this coming. I think you know what the Mountie's about to do, correct?
Yes.
The Mountie in the corner grabs the shock stick, and as Rick Steiner runs to get him, the Mountie shocks Rick Steiner, and Steiner goes down, and he is the winner via disqualification, and the Mountie runs away. And so Mountie's just happy about electrocuting Rick Steiner. Says you should have put a collar on that dog. You should put a collar on that dog, but I did the next best thing.
I was gonna say, the honky tonk man. The honky tonk man had his family heirloom, Bessie. What are some other things that people named their weapons? What did Adonis?
Would you count the sprayer as arrogance?
Arrogance. What did Adonis call his weapon? Frankie.
Yeah, Frankie says relax.
Yes. Well, anyway, the Mountie has his weapon, Silk the Shaka. I took a. I'm sorry, guys. I have a cold. I took a long road to get to that stupid joke.
Yeah, that was a way. And you went around your back to scratch your elbow. So the next thing we get is a previously recorded situation where Tom Zank told Sean Mooney that he went to the booking committee and wanted to prove to Jim Powers that he actually is a good tag team partner, despite what former partners have said about him. And he wants to show Jim Powers that he can be trusted. He's a great tag team partner. So he asked the booking committee to book him and Jim Powers in a tag team match tonight. And the committee decided it was an okay idea, and they're going to do so. So up next, Jim Powers and Tom Zank will team in an in-action match. So we come back from the break. Tom Zank comes out. Jim Powers comes out. They're facing the enhancement talent of Larry Santo and Bob Cook. And as soon as the bell rings, Tom Zank kicks Jim Powers in the nuts and throws him outside of the ring and slams him into the ring post twice. And Tom Zank goes, "Hey, man, I guess you were right," and walks away. So Tom Zank has established himself as a heel and laid out Jim Powers.
I like how he didn't beat around the bush.
Yeah. I don't. It's like that in matches sometimes, like where the guy will like turn on him midway. It's like, why wouldn't you just do it right away? You know what I mean? Like, why put yourself through the abuse of this match if you know you're just going to turn on the guy? Just do it right away.
Right.
And
Get out
that's
of the
what
way.
he did. Yeah, and that's what he did.
Also, like he took somebody as wholesome as Tom Zink and made him a heel.
Yep. So he has now established himself as a heel, kicked the shit out of Jim Powers, and just walked away from it. So that match obviously is declared a no contest. And then we get a hype video for both Brad Armstrong and Brian Pillman. It's not a separate video of each man. It's just their action all blended together with Jim Ross talking over the footage of saying we're going to see two of the best in-ring athletes in the business going at it at the Great American Bash. Be there. And then our next match is the NWA debut or re-debut, whatever you want to call it, of Rick Rude versus the Junkyard Dog. And during this match, Ron Simmons is brought out as a special guest of Jim Ross. And during the match, Jim Ross is interviewing Ron Simmons, and they even show like footage up in the corner of Ron Simmons earlier that day at the Boys and Girls Club, and his desire to be the NWA champion again, and all this, that, and the other thing. So, and during the match, Rick Rude ends up getting the Rude Awakening on JYD and pinning him 1, 2, 3. So that's what happened during that match.
And at this point in his career, it's an effective way to use JYD. Let him be the guy that puts, maybe he beats jobbers, but he should put the main event people over, because his days in '92 are past him.
Oh yes. And I think it's I think Ron was really good in that role of being the guy that like went to the schools and talked to the kids and all that shit. So it's good to get that over.
He actually, I don't want to make this go on forever. I'm sorry, I don't want to get in the weeds, but with you mentioning that, he was actually better at that because he seems so genuine. He was better at that stuff than Hogan. I know Hogan was more popular, but Ron Simmons seemed more genuine. He was better than staying at that stuff because he seemed more genuine. And I would say that Ron Simmons was like the precursor in that going to kids charities and stuff to John Cena. Like he was that good at it.
Like Ron gave off the vibe, and I'm sure he actually did it too, of kind of like what John does, where I'm doing this whether the cameras are around or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying Hogan didn't do the Make-A-Wish stuff when the cameras weren't around, because he did.
Right.
So I want to give him credit on that. But like Hogan wasn't going to go talk to the kids if there wasn't the school, if there wasn't a camera there. You know what I mean? But anyway, that's what we did with that match. So it established we have Rick Rude on our show now, which is not a bad thing ever. And Ron Simmons is a wholesome, nice guy. The next thing we see is an earlier today shot of a meet and greet with Dustin Rhodes and some WCW or NWA fans. And guess what happens? Larry Zbyszko attacks Dustin Rhodes with a trash can, laying him out. And Larry Zbyszko says, "Who's laughing now? You know, like, you want to laugh at me now, Dustin?" and all that shit, and like dumps the trash on him and everything like that. And he's like, "Who's standing now, Kid Rhodes," or whatever, and walks off.
And again, so Mark, Aaron, and I were talking about this earlier. You gotta hear that. If you can hear one voice in your head, it's Larry Zbyszko's voice.
Oh yeah.
Listen here, Rhodes, you cheese bag.
Who's laughing now, Spudhead? And like he yells at the kids, you know, at the fans and all that.
Stupid kids, you bunch of stupid kids.
You know, Spudheads. My favorite wrestling shirt is just Larry. It's my second favorite wrestling shirt. It's just a picture of Larry Zbyszko on an old school TV, and it just says, "Listen here, Spudheads." I love it. And then we show footage of last week when Arn Anderson and Matt Bourne tried to get involved in the Ted DiBiase Bret Hart match. And we find out why, because Jim Cornette brings them out and says that these guys are going to be his tag team champions. If anybody knows how to guide somebody to a tag team champion, guide a team to tag team championships, obviously it's Jim Cornette. He says he's going to do that with Arn Anderson and Matt Bourne. So it's going back to even some more old school territorial stuff, because Arn and Bourne were a team back in the day. So
yes.
Arn and Bourne have oh, go ahead, Nate. Sorry.
I was just going to say it also reunites Bourne and DiBiase in the same group.
Yeah. I think it would be a good, those two guys being together doing promos would be a good mesh, because it'd be like the eloquent Arn Anderson and the off the wall crazy Matt Bourne. So I just think I think that would be fun.
But they both have pot bellies and beards.
Yeah. But they can both kick your ass.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I also have a pot belly and beard, so I'm not judging.
Yeah, me neither. So they're going to go into action as the last two official members of Camp Cornette, and they defeat the random team of Paul Diamond and Jim Duggan. So there you go. That's what that was. That was just to get over Arn and Bourne as a tag team. So anything on that? If not, we'll move on to the next thing.
I said what I was. Or I gave my thoughts. I don't know if Mark has any.
I like the fact that you put the whole Arn and Bourne thing back together, because both are legitimate tough guys.
Yeah.
So
there was a little bit of Jim Duggan in there too. I just realized that you could go off the fact that Duggan was with those guys for a while too.
Yep.
So then we go, like I said, we go to the package of that Jim Ross had recorded earlier that day at the Hart House of Bret Hart, doing a kind of a sit-down interview about talking about wrestling tradition and his family's legacy and the NWA and how he wants to be the man to help reestablish the NWA and bring that back. And then he gives us a tour of the Hart House and the dungeon and talks about the grittiness of that. Then Jim Powers then challenges Tom Zank for the Great American Bash, and we talk about whether or not the booking committee is going to put that match together. We'll find out. Then our next match is playoff last week. Like I said, when the Berserker and Steamboat had their situation and Gilbert got involved, and then Nikita Koloff got involved. So the next match is Nikita Koloff versus the Berserker with his manager Eddie Gilbert. And the match starts, and it's obviously a bruiser of a match. Gilbert tries to get involved again, which obviously brings out Ricky Steamboat, and they all four end up brawling, and it ends in a double disqualification. So
I don't know. My only comment here is I don't know that I have ever seen John Nord versus Nikita Koloff. And I'm not a huge fan of Nikita Koloff in general.
Yeah.
But I think they would have one bruiser of a match. I'll tell you that.
Oh, they would have a slug off, man. It would be bowl and shoe ugly, as Jim Ross obviously called it during the commentary. And then Jim Ross informs us that the booking committee, championship committee, whatever you want to call it, has officially signed off on Tom Zank versus Jim Powers at the Great American Bash, and we also find out that Nikita Koloff will be teaming with Rick Steamboat to go into a tag team match at the pay-per-view versus Berserker and Eddie Gilbert. Then we get the Big Van Vader training video, which is Harley Race, like running him through the paces, like he's actually like hitting him with a chair and shit like that, just showing what Vader's going through.
Mm-hmm.
And loving all of it. And Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan begin to discuss the Vader training video, and they are interrupted by Rick Rude, who comes out and says that he just went back and watched his match like he likes to do, and noticed that on commentary they were paying more attention to Ron Simmons than they were his match. He says, I'm ravishing Rick Rude. You should be talking to me, not the hero of the ghetto, Ron Simmons. And says next time he's in the ring, they better put some respect on his name and talk about him, not some other jabroni. And like slams the table and storms off. And Jim Ross is noticeably shaken up by the situation. And Bobby Heenan's talking about how Rick Rude, if anybody knows Rick Rude, Bobby Heenan knows Rick Rude. Jim Ross, you better just shut your mouth and let it go. You know what I mean? Like, so
like I think that would be that would be one of those times where Bobby Heenan would say, something to the effect of Rick Rude being a nasty individual and being like, I was his manager and he didn't even like me. That
yeah,
kind
he didn't even like me. That guy's best shut your mouth, Ross. And so I thought that was a cool little idea. And then Jim Cornette introduces everybody to the rightful and next NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ted DiBiase, and Ted DiBiase is going to be going into our main event against the younger brother of his of Bret the Hitman Hart. And DiBiase obviously is upset because he should be in that title match, and Bret Hart screwed him, yada yada yada. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, so we get DiBiase versus Owen Hart. The match starts out, DiBiase's getting the best of Owen. Owen starts coming back. He's got DiBiase on his heels, and DiBiase keeps getting frustrated. Like he gets out of the ring and like slams the mat, and he thought this was going to be a throwaway match for him against Owen.
That was one of
back in. Oh, go ahead.
That was one of Ted DiBiase's strongest suits as a heel. Was like he would not throw like the he wouldn't throw like the Christian style, like acting like a little child tantrum, but he had a way of throwing a tantrum about what was going on that was so like like you were saying, like slapping the ropes, and it'd like make his hair kind of poof a little bit, and then he could get his face really red to where he was frustrated and blah. Anyway, that was one of his great gifts as a heel wrestler.
I agree, and that's kind of what I'm going with on this. And then as the match is going on, Owen ends up getting DiBiase in a pinning predicament, but Cornette gets in the ring and hits Owen with the tennis racket, and then Matt Bourne and Arn Anderson get involved, and they end up holding Owen Hart, and Cornette's gonna go try to whack Owen in the head with the tennis racket, but DiBiase takes the racket away from him and instead hits Owen Hart in the neck, throat area with the handle of the racket, dropping him, and this brings out the British Bulldog with a chair who helps save Owen Hart. And as we go off the air, Camp Cornette's backing out, and emergency squads are checking on Owen Hart as he's laid out in the ring. So that's how we went off the air. And that would also be obviously why we did a thing where Bret Hart wasn't in the building, because Bret Hart would have been involved in that. But I don't want those guys doing that yet. So that's what's going on with that.
Mark,
anything on that show?
You know damn good and well Bret would have been involved in that. Not my brother, motherfucker.
Yeah.
That'd be like somebody jumping Nate and Aron being in the building. Or vice versa.
That shit ain't gonna happen. Now I might jump him, but ain't nobody gonna jump him other than me.
Anyway, and also just for the record, Aron would be the one to get jumped. Everybody likes me.
Oh, yeah. I'd be getting beat up. So now Owen's taken out. Bulldog saved him. Bret's obviously going to be upset because he wasn't in the building to help his little brother, but we'll find out more about that next week. So now we are going to be moving in to the last week of programming, because the next week is just it's a hype video show. But anyway, we're into week 3 of NWA Pro Wrestling, moving into the Great American Bash, and it is Jim Ross, obviously, once again with Bobby Heenan, discussing that tonight. There is going to be a one-night tournament to declare the NWA World Tag Team Champions. It's going to be a two-match tournament with obviously a finals. It is going to be Ricky Morton teaming with Tracy Smothers to go up against Rick Martel and Vinny Vegas. And then we're also going to have the Junkyard Dog and Jim Duggan versus Camp Cornette's members Arn Anderson and Matt Bourne. So that is our NWA World Tag Team Championship tournament. So those matches are to come. The next thing we get is Bret Hart comes out. He makes his way to the ring, and he says he's going to keep it short and simple. And says the minute that Ted DiBiase walks into the building, he's gonna lay him flat out. Like, that sounds like something to me that Bret Hart would say. DiBiase, when you get in here, I'm gonna lay you flat out.
Lay you flat out.
I'm gonna lay you flat out for what you did to my brother Owen, my lovable brother Owen. And then the British Bulldog comes out and tells Bret, he's like, "Look, you got Vader at the Great American Bash. It's for the world title. You can't." He's like, "I know what happened to Owen is terrible, but you can't let it distract you." You know what I mean? Like, so he's basically saying, let me worry about DiBiase. You concentrate on Vader, even though I know it's going to be hard for you to do. Harley Race interrupts and says that if he was Bret Hart, he'd listen to Poochie and do what he says. Like, you got to keep your 100% on Vader, because even with 100% on Vader, you don't stay 100% on focus on Vader. You don't stand a chance at the Great American Bash. And then Vader's going to come out for his in-ring match, and NWA officials come out and surround the ring to make sure Bret and Vader don't get into it. And Vader gets in the ring, and he basically beats the shit out of Paul Diamond. And during the entire match, he's just calling Paul Diamond Hitman and smacking him around and everything. And then he ends up giving Paul Diamond 2 Vader bombs and pinning him 1, 2, 3. So, your winner of the match is Vader.
Just picture him slapping Paul Diamond around with them bear claws.
Yeah. And Diamond's big poofy mullet going back and forth.
That guy has bits, bro.
Then we get a report from Sean Mooney that NWA officials have set up for the Great American Bash the British Bulldog versus Ted DiBiase. So that match will happen. It's going to be Bulldog avenging his brother-in-law Owen and his family. And then we move into our next match, which is Ron Simmons taking on Hercules with Jim Cornette. The match starts. It's going back and forth for a couple minutes, and then Rick Rude runs out, attacks Ron Simmons, takes off his belt, and gives Ron Simmons the Rude Awakening with his belt around his neck. And then officials come out and everything like that. Rude's pissed off, but then he gets out of the ring and goes up the announce table again, slapping the desk and asking Jim Ross, who you talking about now? Are you paying attention, you fat ass? Look at the Good Samaritan now, hillbilly. Shit like that. And Jim Ross is...
Bobby Heenan's like, I don't even know this guy, Rick. I don't even know this guy. I don't know him.
Yeah, this guy. You should have heard what he was saying earlier. You know? And obviously Ross is like intimidated until Rude walks away and then talks about how Rude was a backfighter and should have never done that to Ron Simmons, yada, yada, yada. So, anything on that?
Yeah, I just like the whole situation for me is like just, and I mean, I like the idea of Simmons versus Rude. But I also like the idea of Bobby Heenan just heckling Jim Ross. You know what I mean? Like just giving it to Jim Ross as far as like his commentary goes. Like that would be such an important part of this story.
Yeah. Like Bobby's egging it on. He kind of wants to see Ross get slapped. You know, that type of thing.
He's like, listen, Rude, I don't know this guy. You should have heard what you think it's bad tonight. You sure heard what he said about you last Tuesday.
You should have heard him in the car.
I don't know him, but you should have heard him in the car. It's funny.
So then we move into our next match. It's the tag team. It's the first match of the tag team title tournament. Ricky Morton and Tracy Smothers versus Rick Martel and Vinny Vegas. And Ricky Morton and Tracy Smothers end up getting the victory over Rick Martel and Vinny Vegas because they end up double drop kicking Vegas over the top rope, and Morton ends up getting a victory roll on Rick Martel for the 1, 2, 3. So, just trying to think of a team name for Morton and Tracy Smothers, but I haven't figured one out yet. So they're just Morton and Smothers.
Beautifully Southern.
Morton and Smothers sounds like a 70s comedy act.
Yeah.
But I also think that, like, in the future in your promotion, you know who should link up? Excuse me. Larry Zbyszko and Rick Martel. Like, Larry Zbyszko can be like, I was drafted last. How the hell was I drafted last? And then Martel's like, they keep teaming me up with these losers. What is going on?
These losers. What is going on?
They should be the fucking, like the fucking, they got a axe to grind or something. I don't know. Anyway.
They're not old, but they're like the Muppet guys, just like set up in the thing. And they don't like anybody.
They just wear a shirt. Their shirt that they sell like as a team or whatever, like their merchandise. They wear shirts that say, I hate it here.
Yeah, I hate it here. This place is the worst. And then we roll into just separate interviews, just pre-tapes of Brian Pillman and Brad Armstrong cutting their promos about going on to be the tag team or who's going to be the television champion. Then Dustin Rhodes says that he went to the booking committee earlier today and got it approved, and it's going to be the natural Dustin Rhodes versus Larry Zbyszko. And does anybody want to guess what the stipulation is? A last man standing match.
I was about to say a lasto man standing match.
A lasto man standing match.
I was thinking more. Well, never mind. It ain't progressed that far yet. I was gonna say bull rope, but
yeah, that might be down the road. We're playing off lasto and last and everything like that. So it's gonna be a last man standing match between Larry Zbyszko and Dustin Rhodes, and then we move into the second match of the tag team tournament. It's Matt Bourne and Arn Anderson versus Jim Duggan and the JYD. And in the match, it's just a I don't want to say basic tag team match, but it's just a tag team match. And in the end, Matt Bourne and Arn Anderson are successful over JYD and Jim Duggan, so they've now advanced. So later on, just here in a little bit, we're gonna get Matt Bourne and Tracy Smothers versus Matt Bourne and Arn Anderson versus Tracy Smothers and Ricky Morton for the tag team titles.
Good match.
Yes, and Duggan is kind of like what you were saying, Nate, about JYD. It's kind of like he doesn't lose anything by losing. He's just Jim Duggan. You know what I mean?
Well, and to be honest with you, and I know it's your promotion, but when we watch TV now, if you watch WWE or something, you kind of sit back and go, that'd be cool if they did this or whatever. It's almost a 92 to the point in Duggan's career as a face, where in all of this, since you have DiBiase and you have Matt Bourne, you have that whole thing going on, you could even at this point maybe do a turn with Duggan at some point and have him join that group, Yeah. He still has worth.
Yeah, it could be down the road. You never know.
Yeah, just
in the NWA, anything's possible.
In his mouth.
So then we go to a Great American Bash report with Sean Mooney, and he runs down the card. It's sorry, my earpiece fell out. We find out that Nikita Koloff and Rick Steamboat versus Eddie Gilbert and the Berserker have had an added bonus to it because it has now become a six-man match because we have added Rick Steiner and the Mountie to it. So it'll be Koloff, Steamboat, and Steiner versus Gilbert, Berserker, and the Mountie. A grudge six-man tag team match.
I don't know why I think that second team is so funny. I don't know.
Eddie Gilbert, Berserker, and the Mountie?
Yeah.
Because they're all fucking ridiculous. It is a ridiculous team. They're all fucking cartoon characters. And then also, obviously, we're going to see Jim Powers versus Tom Zank. We're going to see Larry Zbyszko versus Dustin Rhodes in a last man standing match. Rick Rude will face Ron Simmons. We will get the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith versus Ted DiBiase. And then the TV title match, Brian Pillman versus Brad Armstrong. And then in our main event for the heavyweight championship, it'll be Bret Hart versus Big Van Vader. And now we're going to move into our WCW World Tag Team, or our NWA World Tag Team Title Championship match. And as the match is going on, Arn Anderson gets a spine buster on Morton after Hercules interfered and hit Morton with a chair as Morton was hitting the ropes. So chair to the back, Arn Anderson spine buster, 1, 2, 3, the winners of the match, and your new NWA Tag Team Champions, Matt Bourne and Arn Anderson. And then as we're going off the air, it's Ted DiBiase, Hercules, Arn Anderson, and Matt Bourne with Jim Cornette, basically cutting a heel promo heel faction promo saying this is the best thing in wrestling and they're going to control 1992 and beyond, and nothing and no one will stop them. And that is how that episode ends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So we're good there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And then, like I said, week 4 is just a like a recap show showing all the highlights and everything. And the only big news coming out of it is that a match has been added. It's going to be a rematch because the booking committee feels that Arn Anderson and Bourne did not fairly, obviously, win that match. So Smothers and Morton deserve a rematch, which they will get at the Great American Bash. So that tag team title match has been added to the pay-per-view.
It's the Rat Pack versus Smorton.
Morton.
Morton. And that was just a joke. I am greatly intrigued by the team of Ricky Morton and Tracy Smothers.
I almost thought the Southern Express, but I don't know. Because the Southern Boys and the Rock and Roll Express, but I don't know.
The Mobile Home Express.
So, is everybody good to move into the pay-per-view?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure nobody needed sure nobody needed to poop or anything.
Actually,
all right. So now we're moving into Baltimore, Maryland for the Great American Bash 1992. Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan welcome us to the show. And before the show starts, Brian Pillman comes out. He wants to do an interview, and he tells Sean Mooney that through watching these videos of Brad Armstrong, hearing his promos and all this, it's been making him think that maybe the way he got here wasn't the right way, and he wants to tell the fans that tonight they're going to see a return of sorts. Brian Pillman wants to wrestle this match on the up and up, and he's starting to see the error of his ways. So he's like, I just wanted to establish that to everybody. Thank you, for your time. I didn't mean to interrupt or postpone the show or anything. Everybody enjoy the show, and walks away. And Jim Ross speaks of Brian Pillman finally going back to showing the integrity that he knew when he met that young man in 1988. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's what we've established there. And Bobby Heenan obviously makes fun of him for trying to be a nice guy.
Yeah.
So then we get into our opening match, which is the 6-man grudge match between the teams of Eddie, Nate's favorite 6-man tag team of Eddie Gilbert, the Berserker, and the Mountie, versus Rick Steamboat, Rick Steiner, and Nikita Koloff. And I didn't write a bunch of notes on spots and shit, but during the match, though, the Mountie does try to involve Silk the Shaka again, but Rick Steiner gets it away from him, and guess what he does? He snaps it in half over his knee, and the Mountie freaks out and runs away. And Steiner chases after him. Koloff ends up getting the Russian sickle on Eddie Gilbert for the 1-2-3. So your winners are Koloff, Steiner, and Steamboat. So
they beat the team of all gimmicks needed.
Yes. And then our next match is Jimmy Powers versus Tom Zank. Tom Zank comes out, and Tom Zank has now dyed his hair blonde and is wearing a robe. So he's now officially become the 80s, early 90s version of what a heel is supposed to be like. You know what I mean?
Like Paul Orndorff or Ric Flair or...
Yeah. There's no way of denying it now. This guy is a heel. Drastically changed his look. The match is back and forth. Powers ends up trying to get Zank up into a side suplex, which he does. But as the ref doesn't see, Zank pulls brass knucks out of his tights as Powers has him up, hits him in the top of the head with the knucks, lands on top of Jimmy Powers, and gets the 1-2-3. So Tom Zank wins that match. His first match as a full-fledged heel. So congratulations, Tom Zank. Anything on that?
Yeah, just the right guy went over. You're establishing a new gimmick, a new character.
Yeah. So the next thing we get is a grudge match with Rick Rude versus Ron Simmons. It's as good as you would think it would be with these two guys. And during the match, Rude ends up trying to go for the Rude Awakening. Ron Simmons spins out of it, sends Rude into the ropes, hits his power slam for the 1-2-3, and your victor is Ron Simmons. So,
and that's a sorry, this is a feud in the kind of finish where even though, because sometimes you with certain people you can book in reverse. Like I have a feeling, and I don't know for sure because it's your booking, but even though the babyface won this match, I'm sure this isn't the last of this feud.
Oh no, this isn't the last of this. So then we roll into the next match, which is for the WCW World's Television Championship. It's Brad Armstrong versus Brian Pillman. Brian comes out. Before the bell rings, Pillman wants to shake Brad Armstrong's hand. Armstrong's a little trepidatious, but ends up doing it anyway. And Pillman doesn't attack him or anything. They just shake hands. And they're having a clean, good back and forth match. And then for an unknown reason, Jim Cornette comes out and he's standing at ringside watching the match. Then Brad Armstrong starts to get the advantage. Jim Cornette gets up on the apron and he's jaw jacking with the referee. Armstrong doesn't like seeing him, so he clocks Cornette. Cornette drops his racket, falls off. Pillman ends up picking up the racket and looking like he's going to throw it out of the ring. And guess what? He smacks Brad Armstrong with that good old racket behind the referee's back because the ref's distracted about the Cornette situation, and pins Brad Armstrong 1-2-3 and becomes the new television champion. And as they're walking out, Pillman picks up Cornette, dusts him off, and they kind of stare at each other for a minute, and then they laugh and hug and walk out. So Cornette is now apparently the manager of Brian Pillman, the new world's television champion.
And, that's a fun combination, actually.
Yeah. I thought it would be too. I'm like, these guys would be great together. I don't know. I don't know if you guys liked the finish or whatever, if it seems flat, but I liked it. So
no, and you know what? It was like, it's like sometimes people in the way Triple H books now, the modern wrestling fans, and I know we're talking 92, and we talked about it last week, how we were going to book these things like we were booking in 1992. You're not going to book them like you would book in 2024. It's not the same business. But there are people now that say Triple H's booking is sometimes predictable. And it's like, well, but that's pro wrestling. Like in pro wrestling, predictability isn't always a bad thing. Like I could tell from the beginning when you had Pillman do that interview that you were telegraphing that he was going to cheat to win somehow.
Yeah.
But that's
you little shitty bastard.
That's the fun
storytelling.
Of it, Yes, exactly.
Storytelling. Either one of two things is going to happen. You're going to get the smart fans that are going to be like, I saw that comment, you guys, that was good. Or you're going to get the people that are gullible and be like, oh, God damn it. You thought you were nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's how that went. Then we're going to move into the 5th match on the card, which is the last man standing match between Dustin Rhodes and Larry Zbyszko. And obviously we get some like stalling with the Larry Lasto chants and this, that, and the other thing. They brawled all over the building. They did their thing. Zbyszko ends up trying to hit Dustin Rhodes with the steel chair, but Dustin kicks it into his face. Chair drops. Zbyszko doesn't drop right away, so Dustin ends up giving him a bulldog onto the chair, and Larry Zbyszko was not able to answer the 10 count, and your winner is Dustin Rhodes. So that's how that went.
And he should have won that. You know,
He should have.
Yeah.
That's how it needed to go.
Because I mean, especially with you having Zbyszko as the heel with a grievance, like this is just one more thing he can have a grievance about, you know.
Yeah, like you didn't beat me, I beat me. I brought the chair in, you didn't. Almost that type of thing, but you had to hit me with it twice. He could even turn it that way. It's like he could even turn it into that. Like he could even say like Rhodes had to use a chair to beat me. Well, you were gonna use the chair to beat him. I never hit him with a chair. You know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So
and then Jim Ross can be like, okay, Larry.
Yeah, okay, Lasto. So then we roll into our semi-main event, which is the British Bulldog versus Ted DiBiase with Jim Cornette. The Bulldog comes out and he's got Owen Hart with him. Owen Hart has a neck brace and he's got crutches. Like Owen's all fuckered up from the attack. And during the match, Cornette tries to get involved, but Owen Hart ends up stopping him. Like he pulls Cornette down off the apron, and then he ends up trying to hit Ted DiBiase, who grabs DiBiase grabs through the ropes, grabs Owen by the hair. Owen tries to hit DiBiase with his crutch, but DiBiase ducks it, and Owen ends up hitting the Bulldog by mistake, and DiBiase ends up rolling up the Bulldog for the 1-2-3, and Ted DiBiase defeats the British Bulldog off of the mistaken crutch shot.
Setting up a lot of possibilities there. And just for the record, you said Owen coming out with the crutches and stuff. It's 1992. I definitely picture some acid wash jeans tucked into cowboy boots.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's a Hart staple, man. People married into that family and started dressing that way. They're like, if you're gonna be here, you got to wear the uniform, buddy. Like you can't be a snazzy dresser and be in this family. We put Terry Funk and Jake Roberts to shame on our shit. I don't know about Jake. Jake might be the worst dresser of all time. Like he showed up at ECW in like parachute pants and a polo shirt. Like, what are you doing? A striped polo shirt.
How are you the only man in the world to own an acid-washed fanny pack?
Like Jake showed up in a striped polo shirt, parachute pants, and snakeskin boots. It's ridiculous.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
So now we're going to move into our second to last match. It's the NWA Tag Team Championships. Championship. Ricky Morton and Tracy Smothers versus Cant Cornette, Arn Anderson, and Matt Bourne. Obviously with Jim Cornette. And it's just a tag team match. It's not like I say it's bad or great or whatever, but they're just having a standard good tag team match. I think these four guys would have, and it just comes out with Matt Vorn and Arn Anderson ended up winning the match over Morton and Smothers, and they retain the tag team championships.
Mm-hmm.
Main reason is there's been a lot of interference. I wanted a couple of heels to just win on their own.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's how that went. And now we're going to move in to the big main event for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. And this kind of goes into what Nate wanted to see because Bret Hart comes out, and guess who he has with him, Nate?
He has Stu with him.
He has Stu Hart with him. And Vader comes out, and he has Harley Race. It's Bret Hart Vader, so you know it's going to be good, especially like this is 1992 Bret and 1992 Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if we would actually got to see that. That would have been fantastic. During the match, Race tried to get involved, but then ends up getting into it with Stu, and Stu takes out Harley Race. And then it goes back and forth some more. And then we roll into the finishing sequence. Vader tries for the Vader bomb, but Bret Hart gets up and kicks the second rope. Vader falls off, and Bret Hart ends up grabbing Vader's legs, rolling forward, and pins Vader 1, 2, 3, and Bret Hart is now your new NWA World Champion.
And I was hoping that was going to be your finish.
Yes.
Just because, first of all, first big show that you have for your promotion, you want to send people home happy. And then also I was thinking in the back of my mind, if Vader wins the title, then you have all heel champions.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Right.
And if you got 1992 Bret on your show, you want that guy to be your champ, I think. And he didn't he didn't make Vader tap or anything. It was like a quick thing, so it just Vader got caught off guard, and his manager got taken out by old Stu and all that shit. So there was a lot of chicanery involved in it too. So I thought it was a good way to end the show and establish the NWA.
And I agree, and I'll let Mark give his comments after I say this. I think that job well done, sir.
Thank you.
I agree. It was a solid card, and your story progression was good. Definitely smart move on putting Bret as your guy, and now that just gives more possibilities towards that storyline as for Vader to be chasing Bret in the belt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you got Ted in there. Like Ted's a wild card in it too. You know, it's just I think it establishes a lot of different top off points you can do with that and everything. So I don't know how you did it, Nate, but I did it after we drafted everybody. I just was like, I'm gonna write my pay-per-view card and then book it in reverse.
Oh yeah, that's definitely how I book too. I want to know where I'm going first and then book to that.
Yeah.
And then before we sign off, and I'm doing this to myself, and it's fine because I have a question that came up in my brain, even though my head feels like it weighs 400 pounds right now. Before we sign off, your main event there, Vader and Bret, made me think about a question that I wanted to ask you guys really quick, if you don't mind.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So people always talk about, and especially those of us that were fans in the 90s, like our peak. I mean, obviously my peak fandom was in the 90s, like late 80s and through the 90s. About the missed opportunity in the WWF with Vader. You know, he comes in, he's strong, he challenges Shawn Michaels for the championship at SummerSlam 96. Shawn doesn't like him, so Shawn doesn't give him everything he could. And it kind of hurt Vader, right? It kind of hurt his career trajectory and Vince McMahon's opinion of him. So my question is, if for some reason, instead of Shawn, in 96 after WrestleMania 12. And I know it's a big some reason because the story was obviously the childhood dream and blah, blah, blah. But say Bret is still the champion come summer of 96. I think that completely changes Vader's career in the WWF as a challenger for Bret as opposed to a challenger for Shawn.
Vader's the champion.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I think it changes Vince's opinion of Vader because Bret would give Vader so much more and Bret's not going to point out Bret's not going to be going back to the locker room pointing out Vader's shortcomings and bitching and moaning and complaining. It's a big what if, but I really do. I think Vader has a much better career in the Fed if Bret's the champion and not Shawn.
I mean, definitely, and like you said, Vader would have beat him for the belt.
Mm-hmm.
Bret would have saw. How do I say it? Like, I think sometimes Bret. I shouldn't say sometimes. A lot of times Bret is kind of a. I don't want to say a crybaby, but how do I say, like, overhyping himself or can't give up on something. Like, there's a lot you can say about Goldberg, but he's right when he's like, dude, that was like fucking 15, 16 years ago. Shut up about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, Goldberg was like, how many times can I apologize for the same fucking thing? Like, let it go. Or how many times can the WWE try to make it right with Bret where he still bitches and moans about it? You know what I mean? It's like, that shit's over, dude. There's a lot of shit that happened to people, and there's a lot of shit that's happened to people in the past, and everybody else is over it, and they're cool now. Like, settle the fuck down. Hogan and Piper made up. It's like, shut the fuck up, you know? But at that time,
if Vince and Bruno can make up, I was just gonna say, if Vince and Bruno can make up,
yeah, it's like, shut up, you know? But at that time in the business, Bret had more Bret was a lot more forward thinking than Shawn was. You know what I mean? Like, Shawn was a very much in the now. What does this mean for me right now?
Right.
That's
instant gratification guy. But Bret was more, what can we do down the road? And I think that came from the fact, and I'm not knocking Shawn Michaels because he's great and he's got a great mind for the business and everything, but that comes from Bret being a promoter's son.
Yeah.
And being a second generation guy. You know, it's like, it's not about exactly all about what's happening right now. It's about going forward. And I don't think Bret had that mentality. He ended up with it, but I think his mentality of that came just through the situations he wound up in. You know, like I don't think Bret was selfish for like a long time until like 96 when he started kind of having to be, because the guys around him were being like that. Like, he wasn't in a Shark Tank for the most part for a long time, and then these other guys started coming around. It's kind of like he started worrying more about himself when he started to have to start worrying about himself, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm rambling, but that's just what I think.
I mean, I just feel like that was a lot of Shawn's problem. It was all me. You had to be in the limelight. I mean, sometimes it's not about you being in the limelight. It's about, can you project someone else into that limelight?
And that's where I'll give Shawn more credit in 2024 than Bret. Even though I love them both, Shawn is willing to say, yeah, that was a fucking douchebag, man. I'm sorry about that. Like, he's willing to, he recognizes his own smell. Whereas sometimes Bret is still, like Aron said, he's still holding on to that shit from 30 years ago or whatever. But
it's like, shut up, dude.
Shawn's literally like, I'm a fucking douchebag, and and I think that's one of the reasons why he's so invested in NXT and the future of the business, because I think he really is genuinely trying to give back, you know, I mean,
Right.
granted, he's getting a nice paycheck doing it too. There's nothing wrong with that, but
Well, like the prime example, and I don't want to get into the weeds to it too, Nate, because I know you said you didn't feel good or whatever, and kind of got to the time frame what we like to keep the show to. But like, I watched a thing with him talk about when he feuded with Hogan,
mhm.
and they were gonna have their SummerSlam match or whatever, and like he said, Vince and the basically said Vince and Hunter came to him and said, like he's like, what do you want to do with this Hogan thing? And they said, we want you to be 96, 90 Sean. And he was like, are you sure? Like, you want me to do that? And they're like, oh yeah, do it, man. Like he said, I wasn't trying to be whatever on Hogan or whatever, but they told me they wanted me to be the heel and they wanted me to be heel Sean and go back to what I used to do. Like they said, can you flip that switch? And he's like, I can flip that switch. And like, you know what I mean? He's like,
Yeah.
It's just, if he wants it to come out, he can have it come out. And he did it on that situation. But I like, that's my thing. It's like Sean's adult enough and smart enough to know that's not how the business works anymore.
Right.
And you got to play along to get along and whatever. And it's not just about me anymore. And I just, that's my thing. I think Brett got ruined by the environment that he was around and wasn't able to get over it. But
I
going
agree.
back, like we went a long way around. But I just, like you said, I think it would have been a different thing had it been 96 Brett versus Vader. You would have been able to get that 3-match series that they wanted to get with Sean and Vader. You would have been able to get that out of Brett.
All right. Well, to wrap up the show, Mark, you haven't been on the show in a bit. Do you want to tell everybody what's going on with you, where they can find you, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, recently I ventured out onto my own on the Whatnot. I no longer work for that company I was working for. If you want to come check me out on Whatnot, Mr. Ice Cold Brew, Mr. _ Ice _ Cold _ Brew on Whatnot. Also thinking about revamping the indie spotlight into a different format. So definitely
we were talking about that. As soon as we finalize what Mark's going to do with that, I will obviously we will let everybody know when that's going to relaunch and et cetera for that.
So I just appreciate everybody's support and look forward to plenty more episodes.
Aron, any parting words for our listeners, Booker Man?
Just about what's coming up, because I like to tell everybody what's coming up, and Nate and I kind of iron this out. And Mark, since you're on, I can let you know if you're interested in doing this with us next week or whenever we record next. We got a new concept, idea, or whatever you want to call it. Nate, what did you say we're going to call it? How it started, how it ended?
How it started, how it ended.
How it ended. And what we're going to do is we're going to watch a first and then a last. So I gave Nate the option of asking or suggesting a WCW branded pay-per-view, and he selected Beach Blast, Bash at the Beach. It's the same show, just different names. So what the concept is we will watch the very first Beach Blast and review that, and then we will watch the very last Bash at the Beach and review that and decide if it started better or ended better. You know what I mean? So
all right.
How it started, how it ended.
All right, just make sure you message you said it's Beach Blast what now?
Now see Beach Blast.
First Beach Blast would have been 92.
92. Yep.
All right.
And then the very last. Oh, go ahead,
the
Nate.
last,
Sorry.
Yeah, the because the first 2 years they called it Beach Blast instead of Bash at the Beach, but it's the same show. It's the same concept. So it's Beach Blast 1992, and then it would be Bash at the Beach 2000.
All right.
That's why this company's in the situation it's in, brother.
So that's what we're rolling into. I think it's good sometimes to watch something that you used to think was bad and then be like, with new hindsight, was it as bad as I thought it was?
Or to realize that it's just as bad as you thought.
Yep, that was as shitty as I remember.
Or sometimes even funnier. I really liked that when I was little, and you watch it now, and you're like, "Holy shit,
it was fucking
terrible."
But that's gonna be it. That's gonna be it for this week. Mark, Aaron, thank you for joining me. Listeners, thank you for joining us. We're gonna sign off here, and just to let you know, I've said this a couple of times on Reliving the Extreme. I haven't got to say it as many times on this show because we don't do this show as frequently. All of the shows, Reliving the Extreme and We Can't Wrestle podcast, as of right now, every time it launches on the podcast audio apps, it is now available pretty much within an hour on YouTube as well. So if you prefer to listen to your podcast on YouTube, it's right there, and it's great now because I don't have to do anything extra. I used to have to go and create a whole other YouTube video for the show. And the way that Google and YouTube are doing it now, I don't have to do that. It just uploads it. So it's there as soon as it is pretty much for the podcast apps on YouTube. So for those of you that prefer that, go ahead, use the YouTube platform. And of course, on YouTube, it's easier for you to give us feedback. You can comment on the video itself. Let me know what you think about the show, any thoughts on what we're discussing, all of that. So we encourage that as well. That being said, we're going to sign off now. We'll see everybody next time. Have a great week, ladies and gentlemen, from us here at the We Can't Wrestle podcast.